What are multidimensional arrays? Just think, array within array. So we'll start this introduction by, I think, modifying our person object. So we're going to go over here, copy this person object, and paste it in here. Now, this person object currently represents a one-dimensional array, considering that, as you can see, we have one open and closed bracket, and there are no other open and closed brackets within here. So it's just an associative array with a bunch of elements, and those elements consist of key value pairs. Now, this is a perfect array to modify, considering the occupation of this person is an author. And it seems that this author has written just one book, but most authors, I would think, have written more than one book, even though that's not the case in my situation just yet, but I'm working on a few more. So we're going to change that book title to books. And instead of pointing to one book that this author wrote, he's actually going to be writing more than one book. So how do we store more than one book? Well, we're just going to go ahead and point it to an additional array. So this is that array that's within the larger array. So we have the outer array, and now we have this internal array for our books element. So I'll just move it so that it's, multi-line so that I can add some stuff. And there we go. We added our first element to this array. I'm also writing a book on PHP and a horror novel. So I'm writing all three of these. Well, actually, this one's already written. This one is being written. And that's the third one. And actually, as a matter of fact, I'm writing a part 2 to this book. So it's going to actually include some code. All right, now that this is saved, how can we access these items inside of here? So we know how to access, for example, the full name, the Dino Kajic. We would just say echo person full name. But how do we access this one? Considering this is just a simple array within an associative array, right? So we have a key right here pointing to a value. That value just happens to be an array. But within this array, all we have are just values, right? We don't have any keys being pointed to any one of these values. So let's just say we wanted to display the second book, right? How would we do that? So let's just go ahead and do some formatting, echo div, and /div, and then in the middle, we are going to call our person object. And within our person object, we're going to have to call the key. So here we are in the array. We start scanning down the keys. We get to books. All right, so now we're in books. And at that point, all we do is just add a second parentheses afterwards to basically specify now we're within books. So now we start scanning down. There are no keys, but remember, on simple arrays, we just have index integers. So it's starting at 0, 1, 2, 3. So we can say that this, in order to access this one, we would just call index value 1. So we would go to person, books, index 1. Let's go ahead and save that. And let's see if it pops up this part 2. If we hit refresh, we end up getting an illustrative introduction to algorithms part 2. Now this may look a little bit overwhelming, and to a lot of people multidimensional arrays initially are, but this is, basically what we're representing right here is just a simple array within this associative array, right? We can also have associative arrays within associative arrays. So what we're going to do now, other people, they'll create these simple arrays for you to look at. I think we're going to go to completely the opposite spectrum. We're going to create one heck of a multidimensional array, and my goal is just to make you get over this fear once and for all by just doing a very complicated looking example, right? If you saw this from the very first go, you would freak out, but we're going to try to work this thing out line by line and just create something, right? Some crazy multidimensional array. So what we're going to do is, of course, I'm going to fall back on my favorite thing, cars, and we're just going to start off by creating an array, right? So an array declaration. So within the car, we're going to specify a year, and we're going to say the 2020. We're also going to specify a make, and that's going to be the Nissan. And we're going to specify the model, and that model is going to be the GTR, pretty much the only good Nissan out right now. Now this is great for a single dimensional array, but we want to get into more multi-dimensional examples. So each one of, most vehicles out there will have different trims, right? So if your Honda is like EX, DX, LX, the GTR also has different models, right? So considering they have more than one trim, we're going to have to specify an array, right? So this trims is going to point to an array that has, so that we can specify more than one trim. All right, so what is the first trim? It is called premium, right? And premium is going to be pointing to some array. We're going to list some features of this premium model, right? Like its price, its specs, etc. There's also the 50th anniversary model, and that 50th anniversary model is also going to be pointing to an array that we're going to list out pretty soon. And what else is there? There's also the track edition, right? And for the track edition, it's going to also have a price. It is going to have specs that we're going to list out. So let's just go ahead and open each one of these up so that we have some nice spacing, and you can see automatically it starts going down. All right, so we said we're going to specify the price, and sure enough we are. For the premium, it starts at $129,998. 50th anniversary price starts at $138,998. And the track edition starts at a whopping $166,998. All right, so now under each one of our trims, we have price, but we also want to include some specs. So we're going to add a comma after each one of these, and we're going to add a space just because we'll be adding a new specs, right? So right here, we're going to say specs. And within the specs, we're going to list a few different things like horsepower, torque, and fuel economy. So we're going to, of course, again, have to store it in another array. So we're going to store specs in another array for this one as well. And for the track edition, same thing. We're going to have specs stored in an array. Now we're going to open up each one of these arrays, and we're going to list out the horsepower. So let's start off with the horsepower. And for the premium, the horsepower is 565 horsepower. For the 50th anniversary, the horsepower is it still 565? It is 565 horsepower. And for the track edition, horsepower is 600. Doesn't seem like a fair upgrade, but maybe that's in the transmission and suspension and all that stuff. We're also going to list the torque, so we're going to add a comma after each one of these, add a space, and let's go ahead and list torque. So torque is rated at 487 foot-pounds. For this one, torque is at, again, 487 foot-pounds. And for the track edition, the torque is actually less, 481 foot-pounds. All right. So, aside from torque, we also want to list fuel economy, right? So that's what we mentioned earlier. So we're going to list that out right here. But for fuel economy, not only do I want to list how many miles per gallon it does, I also want to list out how many miles per gallon on the city versus highway, and also what type of gas it takes. So guess what? We have three different things right there, which means it's going to have to be stored in an array. So we're going to say type is equal to premium. Okay. The city miles per gallon is at 14.4, and the highway is at 10.9. And just by looking at it, it looks like it's exactly the same thing for the other two. So we're just going to copy this whole thing, and we're going to paste it in our 50th anniversary, and we're going to paste it in our track edition. Just remember to have that comma after each one of these. So now this looks, like I said, if you were to look at it initially, it would zoom out. You might not be able to see everything, but I just want to show you how this array looks like. So now we have the outer array, 1 inner, 2, 3, 4 levels deep. So we actually go 4 levels deep, which in college and everything like that, I mean, they'll show you 2-dimensional and maybe 3-dimensional arrays, but I've actually gone as far as 12 dimensions deep. It's just however I wanted to organize my data, right? All right, so now that we're here, let's say we wanted to get the price of this premium edition, right? So let's go ahead, instead of putting it at the bottom, I'm just going to put it right here, and then we're going to move it to the bottom. So we're going to start off with car, and we're in our first array. We're going to start scanning down, and we're going to get the trims. So now that we're in trims, we're going to go to this array. We're going to start scanning down, and we want to get into premium. So we're going to say premium. And then, as soon as we get into premium, right there is price. So we're going to say price. All right. Let's go ahead and move this down now. I just kept it right there so that we can actually quickly look at it instead of moving back up and forward. All right. Save it. Let's go and hit refresh and see what populates on the screen. And there we go, 129,998, which is exactly what it states under the premium trim. What if we wanted to know how many miles a gallon, the track edition gets in the city? It's not that much more complicated, right? So we just go echo div car trims. So car trims. And now we start looking for the track edition. So premium, it opens up and closes right there. So then we can go to the 50th anniversary, opens up, closes right there. So now we're at track edition. So we're going to have to specify track edition. Now once we're in track edition, we're going to have to get to this city somehow. So we start looking down. It looks like cities within fuel economy, and fuel economy is within specs. So start going down track edition, get into specs. So there we are, specs. Then from specs, we start scanning down, we get into fuel economy. So fuel economy, and then from fuel economy, we start looking down and we start getting into, we can see that the city is right there within it. So we can just specify city. All right, great. Now let's go ahead, hit refresh and see what populates on the screen. And there we have it, 14.4 miles per gallon, which is exactly what we had here. So like I said, I know initially this may look scary, but as long as you just remember you can have arrays within arrays, pretty much the way I think about it is I can take this array right here, I can extract it, let's create, let's just go to the bottom. And let's just say we wanted to create a new array, and this is going to be called track trim, and that's going to be equal to an array that contains key value pairs, or even better yet, let's just call this whole thing fuel economy for track edition, and then we can say, just erase all of that, is equal to that array. As you can see, we just extracted that array, and now we can have the array itself. So as long as we can take this array, we can put it in here, but instead of assigning it to a variable, we're going to be just assigning it to a key. And that's it. That's really all there is to multidimensional arrays.